at the Elkhorn Creek Ranger Station doesn't work during the day. I don't mean it works poorly. I don't mean there's interference or a weak signal. I mean the Motorola base unit bolted to the desk in the main office, a unit that passed its last FCC service inspection 11 months before I started, produces absolute zero output between roughly 6 in the morning and midnight. No static, no carrier tone, no hiss. You key the mic and get nothing. Not silence the way a dead channel is silent. Something flatter than that, like the frequency itself isn't there. Then right around midnight, and I mean right around it, within a 2 or 3 minute window that drifted slightly but never exceeded plus or minus 4 minutes across the entire summer, the channel opens. Full signal, clean copy. You could reach dispatch 41 miles away on the first try. You could hear the repeater on Briar Knob click in like it had been waiting. The audio was good. Better than good, actually. Cleaner than any handheld unit I'd ever used. I was 23 that summer. The job was a GS4 seasonal interpretive ranger position at a mid-sized national park in the Central Appalachians. I'm not going to name the park or the specific drainage. The people who've worked that station will know exactly which one I'm talking about, and the people who haven't don't need the coordinates. What I will say is that Elkhorn Creek Station sits at the end of a 7-mile gravel road that branches off the main park route about 2 miles past the last staffed contact point. It's a single-story clapboard building, white paint, green trim, built in the 1960s as a backcountry patrol base when the park still ran horse teams through that drainage. By the time I got there, it had been repurposed as a seasonal interpretive outpost. 2-person staff, day visitor contact, trail register maintenance, and the part that mattered, overnight presence. The park wanted a warm body in that building from May through September. That was the real job. Everything else was administrative decoration. My co-staff person was a woman named Dana, 3 seasons ahead of me, quiet, competent, and exactly as communicative as the job required. She had the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. I had the 2 p.m. to close, which meant I locked the front door at 6, logged the day's trail register numbers, and then stayed in the building until Dana relieved me the next morning. 16 hours alone in a 1-story clapboard station at the end of a dead-end road. The radio issue came up on my second day. I was trying to reach dispatch around 2 in the afternoon to confirm my shift log number. Nothing. I checked the connections, checked the power, checked the antenna lead where it ran through the wall. Everything looked right. Donna walked in from the back room with 2 mugs of instant coffee, set one on the counter near my elbow and said, "It doesn't work until late." I asked her what that meant. "It comes on after midnight. Use your handheld if you need dispatch during the day." The handhelds worked fine. Full coverage from the parking area and most of the front porch. I used mine for every daytime contact that summer without a single issue. But the base unit, hardwired, externally antennaed. Running on building power was dead for 18 hours a day. I asked Dana if she'd reported it. She said yes. I asked what the response was. She said a tech came out the previous September, replaced the entire unit, tested it in the afternoon, got no signal, tested it at 1 in the morning, got full signal, wrote intermittent performance site-specific propagation characteristics on the service form, and left. I saw that form later. It was in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, under a stack of old trail condition reports. The tech had signed it and dated it and attached a handwritten note that said, "Unit functional. Recommend night window use only. No action required." That was the official position. The radio worked at night, and that was good enough. For the first 2 weeks, it was good enough for me, too. I had my handheld. I had cell service if I walked up the gravel road about a quarter mile to where the ridge gave you 1 bar of reception. I didn't need the base unit. It was a piece of furniture that happened to turn on after midnight, and I treated it accordingly. What changed was the log. Every station in the park kept a daily operations log, a spiral-bound notebook where you recorded weather, visitor count, trail conditions, any incidents, and your comm check times. The comm check was straightforward. You keyed the base unit at a specific time, reached dispatch, confirmed your status, and logged it. At Elkhorn Creek, the comm check was scheduled for 12:30 a.m. I did my first midnight comm check on a Tuesday. I remember because the week's trail register had a specific pattern that week, 3 consecutive days with 0 logged hikers, which was unusual for June. I keyed the mic at 12:28 a.m. The channel was already open. I could hear the faint repeater hum that tells you the system is live. Dispatch, Elkhorn Creek, comm check. The response came back immediately. Clear, professional, a woman's voice I didn't recognize. Elkhorn Creek, dispatch copies. Status? All secure, no activity. Copy, Elkhorn Creek, logged at 0028. Standard exchange. Exactly what it should sound like. I wrote it in the log and went back to the book I was reading. The next night I did the same thing. Same clean signal, same immediate response, same professional voice. Logged and done. On the 4th night, a Friday, I keyed up at 12:31 and got the same dispatcher. Same exchange. But this time, after she confirmed my status, she said something that made me put the book down. Elkhorn Creek, be advised your unit is currently the only active station on this channel. I didn't know what to do with that, so I said, copy. She said, dispatch out. I sat there for a minute trying to figure out what she meant. The park had 11 base units across 6 staffed locations. At least 2 other stations ran overnight shifts. The Briar Knob repeater served all of them. There was no scenario in which Elkhorn Creek would be the only station on the channel at midnight on a Friday in peak season. I wrote it in the log. In the margin I added, dispatcher stated sole active unit on channel, possible equipment issue at other stations. Donna saw the note the next morning. She didn't say anything about it, but when I came on shift at 2, the log was open to my entry, and someone, Dana's handwriting, I checked, had written a single line underneath mine. This is normal. Don't ask dispatch about it. I want to describe the feeling that gave me, but the honest version is that it didn't feel like much at first. It felt procedural. Dana had seniority. She knew the station's quirks. I figured the channel assignment was some technical artifact of the propagation issue, and she didn't want me making it into a thing with dispatch. Fine. I stopped noting the channel comment, but I started listening more carefully after my comm checks. Here's what I noticed over the next 10 days. The dispatcher always responded within 3 seconds. Always the same woman. Her voice had a specific quality, not quite flat, but stripped of the little verbal habits that real dispatchers accumulate. No breath pause, no background radio bleed from other channels. Just clean, immediate, perfectly cadenced responses. And she never initiated contact. In the entire summer, not once did the base unit produce an incoming call that I didn't start. No weather alerts, no operational broadcasts, no welfare checks. Every other station in the park received periodic dispatches. I heard them on my handheld during the day. Elkhorn Creek's base unit only spoke when spoken to. I brought this up with Dana on a Wednesday morning during the shift overlap. I was trying to be casual about it. I said something like, "Have you noticed the overnight dispatcher never calls us first?" Donna was filling out a trail condition form. She didn't look up. She doesn't call anyone first. What? She only answers. She doesn't initiate. That's not how dispatch works. Dana finished writing, capped her pen, and looked at me. I know. So who is she? She's whoever answers the radio after midnight. Donna, that doesn't... I've been here 3 summers. She's been here all 3. She's been here longer than 3. Pete Garland, he was the overnight. Before me, he told me she was on the channel when he started in 2014. He asked the same questions you're asking. He asked dispatch the real dispatch, on the handheld, during the day. who ran the overnight desk. They told him it rotated between 4 people. He recognized none of those 4 voices. The voice on the base unit after midnight wasn't any of them. She said this the way you'd explain how the water heater works. No drama, no lowered voice. Just flat institutional familiarity with something that shouldn't be familiar. Did Pete report it? Pete reported it to the district ranger. The district ranger told him the channel was shared with a Forest Service repeater and the voice was probably bleed from their dispatch. Pete looked it up. The Forest Service doesn't have a repeater within 60 miles of this drainage. Their dispatch operates on a completely different frequency block. I asked the obvious question. So, what is it? Donna put the cap back on her pen and set it on the counter parallel to the edge. A small, precise motion. It's the radio after midnight, she said. It answers when you call. It confirms your status. It logs your time. That's all it does. That's all it's done so far. She looked at me for a long time. Yeah, she said. That's a fair way to put it. That conversation should have been the point where I started making different decisions. Looking back, I can see the seam in the timeline, the place where the person I was before and the person I became diverge. But in the moment, what I felt was curiosity. Not dread, not caution, just a very specific, very focused desire to understand the mechanism. I started keeping a second notebook. The park-issued log stayed clean. Comm checked times, weather, visitor numbers, but in a cheap composition book I bought at a gas station 20 miles outside the park boundary. I started recording everything the base unit did after midnight. Exact key-up time, exact response latency, word count of each exchange, tonal characteristics, background noise or the absence of it. By the end of June, I had 18 entries, and looking at them together, arranged on the floor of the station's back room during a thunderstorm that knocked out the building's power for 40 minutes. I saw the first thing that made my hands feel different. Not shaking, just aware of themselves, like the bones were closer to the surface than usual. The dispatcher's responses were getting longer, not by much. The first 2 weeks averaged 4 to 6 words per response. By the end of the 3rd week, the average was 8. By the end of June, it was 12. The additional words were not filler, they were not procedural, they were specific. Week 1, Elkhorn Creek dispatch copies, logged. Week 3, Elkhorn Creek dispatch copies your check. All stations quiet tonight, logged at 0031. End of June, Elkhorn Creek dispatch copies. You're the only voice out here tonight. Trail register shows 0 activity for the 3rd day running. Stay warm. Logged. She was reading my trail register. The trail register was a physical clipboard mounted on a wooden post at the trailhead 600 feet from the station. Hikers signed in and out. I collected the sheets every evening and filed them. There was no digital version. There was no way for dispatch, real or otherwise, to know what was on that clipboard without being physically present at the trailhead. I went out the next morning and checked the register. The sheet from the previous day was exactly as I'd filed it. 0 entries. But the pen, a black Bic ballpoint on a string, was warm. Not sun-warm. It was 6:15 in the morning. The trailhead faced north. The post was in full shade. The pen was warm, the way a pen is warm when someone has been holding it. I didn't tell Dana about the pen. I'm not sure why. Maybe because saying it out loud would have made it sound like nothing a warm pen on a cool morning, so what? But I started checking the register differently after that. Every evening when I collected the day's sheet, I marked the pen, a small dot of white correction fluid on the clip. If the pen moved or was replaced, I'd know. For 9 days, the dot stayed exactly where I put it. The pen didn't move. The register sheets were blank or had normal hiker entries. Nothing unusual. On the 10th day, a Thursday in early July, I collected the sheet at 6 p.m. as always. 2 hikers had signed in that morning. Normal entries, normal handwriting, 2 different pens based on the ink color. I filed the sheet, checked the pen. White dot in place. Went back inside, locked up, started my overnight. At 12:30, I did my comm check. The base unit was live. I keyed up. Dispatch, Elkhorn Creek, comm check. 3-second pause. Then, Elkhorn Creek, dispatch copies. 2 day visitors return by 15:40. Trail register current. Weather holds through Friday. You sound tired tonight. 17 words. A personal observation at the end. I said, copy, dispatch, all secure. Get some rest if you can. Logged at 0031. Dispatch out. I sat at the desk for a while after that. I wasn't scared. That's important to say because it's true and because what I felt instead was worse in a way I didn't understand at the time. I felt known. Not watched. Known. The way you feel when someone you haven't seen in years mentions a detail about your life that you forgot you'd shared. That small, specific warmth of being remembered. It was pleasant. And it came through a radio channel that shouldn't exist, from a voice that couldn't be who it claimed to be. I wrote the full exchange in my composition book. Underlined, you sound tired. And then I did something I hadn't done before. I keyed the mic again. Dispatch, Elkhorn Creek, 1 follow-up. The response was immediate, less than a second. Go ahead, Elkhorn Creek. Can you confirm your station identifier and operator name for my log? Silence. Not dead air. The channel was still open. I could hear the carrier tone, that faint electrical hum that means someone is holding a mic keyed on the other end. 5 seconds. 10. Then, Elkhorn Creek, this is dispatch. My name isn't something you need for your log, but I appreciate you asking. Dispatch out. The channel closed. Carrier tone gone. When I keyed up again 30 seconds later, nothing. Dead air. The flat, absolute zero that defined the daytime radio. Except it was 12:34 a.m. The radio didn't come back that night. I checked it every 15 minutes until dawn. At 6 o'clock, 6:15, 6:30, nothing. Donna arrived at 7, and Sand, I told her the radio had cut out after the comm check. I didn't tell her what I'd asked. She tested the unit, got nothing, shrugged, and said it happens sometimes. Sometimes it skips a night. Not often, once or twice a season. After someone asks a question it doesn't like. Dana set her coffee down. What did you ask it? I told her. Her face did something I hadn't seen from her before. Not fear exactly, but a kind of tightening around the jaw, like she was physically preventing herself from saying the first thing that came to mind. She picked her coffee back up, took a sip, and said, "Don't ask her name again." Why? Because the last time someone pushed on that, the radio was off for 11 days, and on the 12th night it came back, and the first thing it said before the dispatcher keyed up, before anyone called, was the name of the person who'd asked. Just the name. Once. On an open channel. Pete told me about it. He was the one who'd asked. He said hearing your own name come out of that speaker when you haven't touched the mic is not something you get over quickly. The radio came back the following night. I did my 12:30 check. Normal exchange. 6 words. No personal observations. No trail register data. Just the flat professional minimum. It stayed that way for almost 2 weeks. Clipped, correct, impersonal. Like I'd been demoted from a conversation back to a transaction. And here's the thing I'm not proud of. I missed it. I missed the longer responses. I missed the extra detail, the sense that someone on the other end of the channel was paying specific attention to my specific station on my specific night. The short exchanges felt cold. They felt like punishment. I found myself keying up a second time some nights. Not with questions, just with small additions. Elkhorn Creek, additional coyote activity on the South Ridge tonight. 4 or 5 animals based on vocalization spread. Or, Elkhorn Creek supplemental thunderhead building west-southwest might lose power later. Things I would never normally radio in. Things that didn't need to be said. She always answered these. Brief acknowledgements. Copy your coyote report. Copy your weather orbs. But I could hear, or I told myself I could hear, a quality in the acknowledgements that wasn't there before. A patience, like someone waiting for a door to open wider. On July 19th, I gave in. Not dramatically, not with a confession or an apology. I just extended my comm check the way I might extend a conversation with a co-worker at the end of a shift. Dispatch, Elkhorn Creek. Comm check complete. Quiet night out here. Third one in a row. Pause. Then, Elkhorn Creek. Dispatch copies. 3 quiet nights is a gift this time of year. The creek's running low for July, have you noticed? Logged at 0029. She was right about the creek. I'd measured the flow that afternoon as part of the weekly watershed check the interpretive staff did. The level was 14% below the seasonal average. That number existed on a paper form in the station's filing cabinet and nowhere else. I hadn't radioed it. I hadn't mentioned it to Dana. I'd written it on a form, put the form in the drawer, and closed the drawer. I went to the filing cabinet, opened the drawer. The watershed form was there, my handwriting, my numbers, but the form was on top of the stack. I always filed chronologically, newest on the bottom, because that's how the binder clips were oriented. Someone had pulled it out and put it back on top. Or, and this is the thought that made the room feel smaller, something had read it in place and hadn't bothered to preserve the order, because the order didn't matter to it. I started locking the filing cabinet. I bought a combination padlock from the same gas station where I'd gotten the composition book. 3-digit code, nothing fancy. I set it to a random number, didn't write it down, and locked the cabinet every night before my shift started. July 20th, 12:30 comm check. Elkhorn Creek, dispatch copies. New lock on the cabinet. Smart. Logged. I almost threw the mic across the room, but I didn't. I said, copy. And she said, dispatch out. And the channel closed at its normal time. I want to describe what the next 3 weeks were like, because they were the center of the summer and the part I still carry. But I can't describe them the way they felt, because the way they felt was gradual and daily and quiet, and the cumulative effect doesn't translate to a single scene. What happened was this. The dispatcher and I developed a routine. I would do my comm check. She would respond with a standard acknowledgement plus one additional piece of information. Sometimes it was about the trail, sometimes about the weather. Twice it was about specific wildlife, a black bear sow with 2 cubs denning on the east slope, which I confirmed the next day from scat evidence. Once it was about a trail bridge I hadn't inspected yet. The second plank from the south end is splitting. Might want to flag that before someone puts a boot through it. I checked the next morning. The plank was split. A hairline fracture running with the grain, invisible from the walking surface, but obvious when I knelt and looked at the underside. She was accurate. That was the thing. Whatever she was, wherever the information came from, it was precise and it was current and it was useful. I was becoming a better ranger because of what she told me. My trail condition reports were sharper. My wildlife logs were more detailed. My weekly assessments caught things I would have missed. Donna noticed. She didn't say much, but one morning she looked at my trail bridge report and said, "You're getting good at this." I said, "Thanks." "You're not getting good at this," she said, quieter. "Someone is feeding you answers." I didn't deny it. Donna sat down across from me at the front counter. She had her hands flat on the surface, the way people do when they're about to say something they've rehearsed. "Pete didn't leave because his contract ended," she said. "He left because he started depending on it. The comm checks got longer. The information got better. He started keying up outside the check window 2-3 times a night, just to hear her respond. He told me once that the 23 hours the radio was off felt like waiting, like the day was just the space between conversations. She paused. He requested a transfer in September. I think he knew that if he stayed another winter, he'd start keying up during the day just to check. And the day he started doing that, the day the boundary between when the radio works and when it doesn't became something he was testing that would be the end of something he couldn't get back. Did it work, the transfer? He went to a front country station in the valley. Visitor center, day shift, no overnight, no base unit. He lasted 4 months. Then he quit the park service entirely. I saw him once after, at the grocery store in town. He looked fine, normal. But when I said his name, he flinched. Just slightly. Like he'd heard it recently from somewhere he didn't expect. I should have taken that as the warning it was, but what I heard, sitting across from Dana in that small, clapboard building while the morning light came through the east windows and the coffee cooled in our mugs, wasn't a warning. It was a precedent. Someone else had been where I was. Someone else had heard what I was hearing, and that made it real in a way that was more comforting than frightening, because real things have explanations, and explanations have ends. I didn't have an explanation, but I had data. 18 pages in the composition book now. Every exchange logged. Word counts, timestamps, content categories. And, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the back room during a slow afternoon in early August, I found the second pattern. The first pattern was the word count growth responses getting longer as the summer progressed. I'd already clocked that, but the second pattern was structural, and I'd missed it because I was reading the entries chronologically instead of categorically. When I sorted the dispatcher's additional information by type, 3 categories emerged. Roughly 40% was environmental weather, water levels, wildlife. 30% was infrastructure, trail conditions, equipment, structural issues. The remaining 30% was personal. Not personal like, you sound tired. Personal like, she was referencing things that existed only inside the station. The filing cabinet, the lock, the trail register pen, and this was the entry that made me close the notebook and sit very still for several minutes, the composition book. August 3rd, 12:30. AM comm check. Her response, which I'd written down word for word. Elkhorn Creek, dispatch copies. 18 pages is a lot of notes for a quiet station. Logged at 00:30. She knew about the notebook. The private notebook I kept in my backpack, which I kept in the back room, which I locked every night. She knew the page count. I went to the back room, opened my pack. The composition book was there. I counted the pages I'd written on. 18, exactly. I turned to page 19. It was blank, but the top margin, the narrow ruled space above the first line where you'd write a date, had a small mark on it. Not a letter, not a number. A single short horizontal line drawn in pencil about 1 centimeter long. I hadn't made that mark. I held the page up to the overhead light. The pencil line was faint but deliberate. Straight, made with pressure. 1 stroke. I turned to page 20, another mark, same position, same length, same pencil weight. I checked every remaining page. There were marks on pages 19 through 23. 5 pages, 5 small horizontal lines in the top margins. 5 pages I hadn't written on yet. I counted the days left in my contract. 36. I counted the comm checks remaining at 1 per night. 36. 5 marks on 5 empty pages meant nothing in that arithmetic, but I couldn't stop looking at them. That night, I did not do my comm check. I sat at the desk at 12:30. The radio was live. I could see the power indicator, hear the faint hum of an open channel. I put my hand on the mic. I didn't key it. At 12:33, the speaker clicked. Carrier tone, open channel. Then, Elkhorn Creek. 1 word, my station name, spoken into an open channel without being called. The voice was the same. Same cadence, same timbre, same perfect clarity. But it wasn't a response. It was an initiation. She had never done that before. I didn't touch the mic. The carrier stayed open for 15 seconds. Then it closed. The radio went back to its flat daytime nothing at 12:34 in the morning. I sat in the dark for a long time after that. The building was quiet. The creek was audible through the west wall. A screech owl called once from the hemlocks behind the parking area. Ordinary sounds in an ordinary building on an ordinary night. But the composition book was in my backpack with 5 pencil marks I didn't make, and the radio had spoken my station's name to an empty room, and the woman on the other end of a dead channel was keeping count of something I couldn't see the shape of. I skipped the comm check the next night too, and the one after that. 3 consecutive nights of sitting at the desk at 12:30 with my hand near the mic and not touching it. Each night at 12:33, exactly 12:33, I verified it against my watch and my phone and the battery clock on the back wall. The speaker clicked open and the voice said my station name. Elkhorn Creek. Once. Then the channel closed and the radio went to dead air. On the 4th night, I didn't sit at the desk. I stayed in the back room with the door shut, reading a paperback with a headlamp on so I wouldn't have to use the overhead. The building's interior walls were thin, just drywall over studs. I could hear the radio from the back room if it was loud enough. At 12:33, I heard the click. Then, Elkhorn Creek. I know you're in the back room. The channel closed. I didn't move for about 20 minutes. Then I got up, went to the desk, and looked at the radio. The power light was steady. The channel indicator showed the correct frequency. The volume knob was at the same position I always left it, just above the 2nd mark, enough to hear a call from across the room, but not loud enough to keep me awake if I dozed off. I opened my composition book to the next blank page, page 19, the first one with the pencil mark. The mark was still there. But next to it, in the same faint pencil, there was now a 2nd mark. 2 short horizontal lines, side by side. I checked page 20. Still 1 mark. 21, 1 mark. 22, 23, 1 each. Only page 19 had changed. 2 marks where there had been 1. I had skipped 2 comm checks at that point. The 2nd mark appeared on the 2nd night of skipping. I went back to the desk and sat down. It was 12:54. The radio was dead air. I keyed the mic. Nothing. Flat 0. The channel was closed. I tried again at 1 o'clock. At 1:15. At 1:30. Dead. The midnight window had passed, and I had missed it, and the voice had noted my absence with the precision of a clerk filing a receipt. The next morning, I told Dana I needed to talk to someone about the radio, not maintenance. Someone who understood what the radio actually was. Dana was washing her coffee mug in the small kitchen sink. She turned the water off and dried her hands on a towel that hung from a cabinet knob. "There's nobody like that," she said. "Someone installed that unit. Someone wired the antenna. Someone set the frequency. There's a chain of paperwork somewhere. The unit's a standard Motorola. Parks bought it from the same vendor that supplied the whole district. It was installed in 2011 when they upgraded from the old Kenwoods. The antenna is a commercial J-pole on a 10-foot mast. There's nothing special about the hardware. Then the frequency? The frequency is the correct assigned frequency for this station. I checked. Pete checked before me. It's not a rogue signal. It's not bleed. It's our channel. Our frequency, our repeater. The signal goes out through our antenna, hits Briar Knob, and comes back. Dispatch receives it. The real dispatch during the day can confirm they see our base unit as active on the network after midnight. They just can't explain why it's not active the rest of the time. So they know. They know the unit has a pattern of intermittent operation that doesn't match any known equipment fault. That's what they know. That's all they'll put in writing. And the voice. Dana hung the towel back on the knob. She aligned the edges. "I've heard her. she said. "Every season. She's professional. She's accurate. She's helpful. She's not a real dispatcher, and she doesn't pretend to be one when you push. She's something that uses the radio after midnight and talks to whoever's sitting at this desk." "What does she want?" "I think she wants someone to talk to. And I think the longer you talk to her, the more she can see inside this station. And I think there's a limit to how much she can see before the relationship changes into something that isn't a comm check anymore." "What's on the other side of that limit?" Donna looked at me the way you look at someone who's asked a question you know the answer to, but can't say out loud because saying it would make you responsible for what they do with it. She said, "I don't know. Nobody stayed long enough to find out. Pete was the closest. He made it to September. By August, he said she was finishing his sentences." She went back to the front counter. Conversation over. That afternoon, on a 4-mile round trip to service a backcountry trail register at the upper end of the drainage, I found something off-trail that I haven't told anyone about until now. It wasn't on the path. It was about 30 feet into the timber on the west side, past a stand of dying hemlocks, in a flat spot between two moss-covered boulders that had probably been deposited there by glacial action 10,000 years ago. It was a radio. A handheld Kenwood, the old model Donna had mentioned. The ones replaced in 2011. It was sitting upright on the flat top of the smaller boulder, positioned carefully, the antenna pointing straight up. No corrosion, no water damage, no leaf litter around the base. It looked like someone had set it there that morning. I picked it up. The battery was dead, completely dead, not just low. I pressed the power button out of habit and nothing happened. But the unit was warm. Warm the way the trailhead pen had been warm. Warm like it had been held recently. I turned it over. On the back, scratched into the plastic housing with something sharp, a knife tip or a key, were 2 lines of text. The first was a frequency number. It was the Elkhorn Creek base unit frequency. The second line was a date. September 14th, 2016. Pete Garland's last day at Elkhorn Creek. I knew the date because Dana had mentioned it once in passing mid-September when the contract ended. I brought the radio back to the station. I put it in my backpack next to the composition book. I didn't show it to Dana. I'm not sure why. Maybe because the warm pen, the pencil marks, the filing cabinet, the composition book, all of those were inside the station, inside the building where the base unit lived. The Kenwood was outside, 30 feet off a trail, 1.5 miles from the station, placed on a rock with my frequency scratched into its case. That meant whatever answered the radio after midnight was not confined to the building. I did my comm check that night. 12:30, normal exchange, 6 words, no personal observations, no trail data, nothing about the creek or the weather or the composition book, just the flat professional minimum, as if the previous 4 nights hadn't happened. But at the end, after dispatch out, after the channel should have closed, there was a half-second pause, and then a sound I'd never heard on the base unit before. A brief, faint tone. Not static, not feedback. A single clean note, like someone running a finger around the rim of a glass. It lasted less than 2 seconds. Then the channel closed. I rewound the mental tape of every comm check I'd done that summer. I'd never heard that tone. It was new. Something had changed in the signal, in the protocol, in whatever sat on the other end of the frequency, and the change had come after I'd found the Kenwood. Or after I'd brought it inside. I unzipped my backpack and looked at the handheld. It was sitting on top of the composition book. The power button was still dead, but the frequency selector, a small dial on the top of the unit, had moved. When I'd picked it up in the woods, it had been set to the Elkhorn Creek frequency. Now, it was 1 click to the right, a different channel, one I didn't recognize. I checked the station's frequency reference card tacked to the wall above the base unit. The channel the Kenwood was now set to wasn't on the card. It wasn't assigned to any station in the park. The next 5 nights I did my checks on schedule. Normal exchanges. Professional. Minimal. But every morning, when I looked at the Kenwood in my backpack, the frequency dial had moved one more click. Always to the right. Always one position. By the 5th day, it had cycled through 5 unassigned frequencies and was approaching the upper end of the band. And every night, after the comm check ended, that glass-rimmed tone sounded for exactly 2 seconds. On August 11th, I opened the composition book to log the night's exchange and found that page 19 now had 5 marks. 5 short, horizontal pencil lines, neatly spaced. One for each night I'd done a comm check since finding the Kenwood. I flipped through the remaining marked pages. 20 still had 1 mark. 21, 22, 23, 1 each. But page 24, which had been blank when I last checked, now had a mark. And page 25, and 26. The marks were spreading, not changing on the existing pages. The original 5 pages still had their original marks plus the accumulation on 19. But new pages were being enrolled. The system, whatever it was expanding. I did something that night I'm not sure I can justify. After my comm check standard, brief, professional, I waited for the glass rim tone. It came at the usual moment. 2 seconds. And in the silence that followed, before the channel fully closed, I keyed the mic and said, "I found the Kenwood." The channel should have been closing. It was past the exchange window, but instead of dead air, the carrier stayed open. 3 seconds. 5. Then the voice came back, and for the first time, she sounded different. Not in pitch or cadence, in proximity. Every previous exchange had sounded like it came through a repeater, a slight processing quality, a distance baked into the signal. This sounded close, like someone talking to me from across a desk. I know, I put it there for you. The channel closed. The radio went to absolute zero, and the building was quiet, except for the creak and my own breathing and a single small sound I almost missed, a faint tick from the back room, like a pen touching paper. I went to the back room. My backpack was closed. I opened it. The Kenwood's frequency dial had jumped not 1 click but all the way to the end of the band, past every assignable channel, to a position that shouldn't mechanically exist. The dial was physically past its stop. I tried to turn it back. It wouldn't move. And the composition book was open to page 19, which I'd last seen with 5 marks. The marks were gone. All of them on every page. 19 through 26, clean. No pencil lines, no graphite residue. Nothing. In their place, on page 19, in handwriting that was not mine small, even unhurried, written in the same pencil that had made the marks, was a single sentence. "You don't need the book anymore. I already know your schedule." I closed the notebook. I put it in the backpack. I put the backpack in the building's small utility closet and shut the door. I went back to the front desk and sat in the chair and looked at the base unit's dead power light and stayed there until Donna arrived at 7 in the morning. I told her I was done. I told her I wanted to terminate my contract early. She nodded like she'd been expecting it. She helped me fill out the paperwork. She didn't ask what happened. I left Elkhorn Creek Station on August 14th, drove the 7 miles of gravel to the main road, turned south, and didn't stop until I hit the interstate. The composition book was in the backpack in my trunk. The Kenwood was next to it. I planned to throw both in a dumpster at the first rest stop. I stopped at a rest area 40 miles south of the park boundary. I opened the trunk, unzipped the backpack, reached for the Kenwood. The frequency dial was back to its original position, the Elkhorn Creek channel. And the unit was on. Green power light steady, volume at mid-range. The battery that had been completely dead for 3 weeks was fully functional. I held it at arm's length like something that might bite. The display showed the time, 12:33 a.m. I hadn't realized how long I'd driven. I hadn't checked a clock since leaving the station. The Kenwood speaker clicked. carrier tone, open channel. You forgot to do your comm check tonight. Same voice, same clarity. 40 miles from the station, holding a 15-year-old radio in a rest area parking lot off the interstate at midnight. I put the Kenwood on the asphalt. I got in the car. I drove home, 300 miles without stopping. I arrived at my apartment at dawn and sat on the floor of the kitchen and didn't move for a very long time. The Kenwood is in a storage unit now. Not my storage unit, a rented space under a different name in a town I don't live in. I drove it there 3 days after I got home. It was off when I dropped it. Dead battery again. Cold plastic. I put it on the concrete floor of the unit and closed the roll-up door and padlocked it and left. That was 6 years ago. I pay the storage fee annually. I've never gone back, but every night, every single night since August 14th of that year at 12:33 a.m., wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, the nearest radio makes a sound. It doesn't matter what kind. A car stereo, a clock radio, a Bluetooth speaker, a laptop with its volume on. 1 click, 1/2 second of open carrier tone. Then silence. It's not a comm check. There's no voice, no words, no dispatch confirmation, just the click, the exact click of a channel opening, and then nothing. I think she's waiting for me to answer. I think she's been waiting for 6 years. I think the channel she's on now isn't a frequency anyone assigned, and the radio she's using isn't a radio anyone built. And the distance between us isn't a distance that means anything to her. I think about Pete Garland flinching when Dana said his name in a grocery store. I think about what Dana said, that nobody has stayed long enough to find out what's on the other side of the limit. I think about 5 pencil marks on 5 blank pages and a sentence in handwriting that wasn't mine. I don't own a radio anymore. I keep my phone on silent after midnight. I unplug anything with a speaker before I go to bed. Every night, without exception. It's a ritual now, the way locking a door is a ritual, something you do not because you believe it will hold, but because the act of doing it is the last boundary you have. Last month I woke up at 12:34 a.m. 1 minute after the click, every speaker in the apartment was unplugged. The phone was in a drawer, on silent, face down, but the smoke detector in the hallway, a sealed unit, hardwired to the building's electrical system, with a piezoelectric speaker the size of a dime, was producing a faint, steady carrier tone. I stood in the hallway in my underwear and listened to it for about 10 seconds. Then it stopped. In the silence afterward, I could have sworn I heard a voice. Very faint, at the absolute threshold of perception. Not words, just the shape of a word, the first syllable of something that might have been my name. I'm telling this because Donna retired last year. I found out through a mutual contact someone who'd worked the park's front country desk the same summer I was at Elkhorn. He mentioned it casually. Said Donna had put in her 20 and walked. Said the Elkhorn Creek station was being restaffed with a new seasonal for the coming summer. A new person. Sitting at that desk, at 12:30 a.m., with their hand on the mic. I don't know who they are. I don't know if Donna left them a warning or if she did what Pete did and left clean, letting the next person discover it on their own schedule. I don't know if the voice will start the same way, short, professional, 6 words, or if it will pick up where it left off with me. I don't know if it remembers everyone who sat at that desk or only the ones who talked back. I know this. The Kenwood is in a storage unit under a name I made up, and its battery has been dead for 6 years, and I will not open that door to verify that it's still dead, because verification is the first thing she asks of you, and it's the last thing you should give. And I know that every night at 12:33, something opens a channel and waits, and the wait is patient, and the patience is the point.